I would like to welcome you all to the author's talk for Firewall. We have Jack Nolan here, who, in addition to serving in the U.S. military as a propagandist, is, as people do in Los Angeles, is an actor. So I'm hoping for an entertaining and fascinating presentation, and then there will be Q&A. So without further ado, Jack.
First, thank you all so very much for having me. We're in an interesting situation in our country right now, aren't we? Several intelligence agencies have alleged that a foreign power has exerted influence upon our voting system in order to get their favored candidate in office. Now, I really don't want to get into the question of which candidate we preferred, whether on the left or the right. This is an American problem. When you have a foreign power doing that, it affects the legitimacy of our entire government. The tool that they used to do this is, in a word, propaganda. Now, our founding fathers, Washington, Jefferson, Franklin, geniuses all, they built a republic that has not only survived, it has flourished, spread through the world, defeated slavery, communism, fascism. It's vital, and it preserves our freedoms, our way of life, and our ability to live in this free society affects us every day. And that's terrific. The problem is there are always authoritarians out there, and the U.S. military exists because of that. And having somebody like Vladimir Putin come in and affect our election results, well, obviously it's unacceptable. Unfortunately, even if these allegations are proved to be true and Mr. Trump was to be ejected from the Oval Office tomorrow, the problem, the central problem remains propaganda. Vladimir Putin has shown us a weakness in our system. In their genius, our founding fathers could not have foreseen, in an era when ponies carried the mail, a time of 20th century propaganda raised to the power of 21st century communication technology. We are unprepared for this. And not meaning to sound paranoid, although I inevitably always do, they'll be back, and there will be more of them. The Saudis, whoever, will also try to interfere with our system in order to get their preferred candidates elected. How do we fix this? Propaganda, when you really start studying it, is interwoven into the fabric of our lives. We really can't dispense with it. And honestly, it does a lot of good, and it serves a lot of important economic functions. I'm not advocating that we outlaw it. A little bit of regulation, a little bit of corralling, sure. We could stand that. But to try to fix this problem through legislation, well, it's not going to work, not and keep a free country. Besides, let's be frank. Trusting the Democrats or the Republicans to fix the problem of propaganda is ludicrous. They're not upset that the United States populace was propagandized. They do it all the time. They're more like royalty trying to run poachers off of their hunting grounds. They're upset that somebody else horned in on their target audience. With apologies to Harry Truman, this time the buck stops with us. We must understand propaganda. We must study it. I believe that the principles that I teach in my book, Firewall, The Propagandist Guide to Self-Defense, should be required reading to get a high school diploma. When I was in college, I remember taking a wonderful class in Aristotelian logic, argumentative logic, learning about fallacies and so forth and so on. And I remember thinking, this shouldn't be a college elective. This should be taught at the high school level. This should be taught to high school seniors. Well, I feel the same way about this. And in fact, I'm hoping to develop, it's called a module, 4-week module, 2-week fast track for high schools. And I would be very reassured if that information was out there. So what is this information I'm talking about? How much time do we have? Because it took me 5 hours to do the audiobook. The whirlwind tour, ladies and gentlemen. Pay attention. What is propaganda? Well, you can look it up on the Wikipedia. You can look up in the dictionary. You'll get all kinds of definitions. My favorite definition is the simple, almost brutalist military definition. Any message that serves the needs of the sender. Any message that serves the needs of the sender is, by definition, propaganda. Propaganda is a or any message that serves the sender. Repetition is also a valuable tool in propaganda. So, when you have a little girl look up at you and say, "Would you buy me some ice cream, please?" That's propaganda. It's very simple propaganda, rudimentary, but it's very effective, as any parent will tell you. Or if I say to you, "Buy my book," yes, that's propaganda. I get $3 a pop. But I'm really more interested in getting the information out there than I am getting that. And at least I told you what I was when I started. But when you have a message like, "Vote for this candidate," or a message like, "Buy our product," "Buy our service," "Eat at our restaurant," that's also propaganda. Advertising is a subset of propaganda. It's a little brother. Big brother propaganda went to work for the government and is working extensively for people like North Korea. Little brother advertising went to work in the business world. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with advertising and making money so long as you're telling the truth. So, the first tripwire, the first wall that our personal firewall incorporates is the message that we have just received, propaganda. Does it serve the needs of the sender? But that begs the question, doesn't it? Who is the sender? And when you start asking that question, you'll discover how many messages you get every day where the sender's signature has been effaced. The serial numbers have been filed off. Most recently, of course, I doubt Mr. Putin signed the messages he sent to the United States. So it puts you immediately into the thought pattern of a detective. Cui bono? Who benefits? Buy the person you're engaged to a diamond engagement ring, not signed De Beers. The third barrier. Is that source, once you've identified it, credible? For example, does anyone remember Baghdad Bob back in the era of Saddam Hussein? That guy rapidly lost his credibility. He may have had some at first, and he lost it quick to the point where he became a laughingstock. That is what happens when you lose credibility. So news organizations are very jealously guarding their credibility, as, for example, Dan Rather learned to his discomfort back in 2003 when he published information that turned out to be spurious with CBS News' imprimatur on it. Very important for organizations like CNN, the New York Times, to maintain their credibility. Those news organizations that handle the extremes, like Occupy Democrat or Breitbart, not so much. Is the sender credible? And you don't want to lose your credibility if you're going to be a propagandist. Why did this person send me this message? Very important question. Let's look at the news. The news, including creditable organizations like CNN, always have an agenda that they're not telling you about. That agenda can be as simple as sell newspapers, get hits on websites. Therefore, their headlines are going to be sensationalist. This horrifying new development. And certainly you're going to find even more of that the more you get to the extremes and the less credible the sources. Is the message, why did this person send me the message? The news organizations can alter public opinion without lying. Without lying and without jeopardizing their credibility. How? By choosing very carefully what truths they're going to communicate to you. Now, fortunately, we live in the era of the internet where truths are out there. The question is, can you find them in the midst of all the noise? But if something is good news, well, it doesn't get covered, does it? Because that doesn't sell newspapers. The fact that, for example, the crime rates are down to historic lows, so I understand. Well, that doesn't sell the morning paper, does it? Or nowadays, the feed sites. So yes, all of these messages that you received through the media, through the advertisements, and through propaganda organizations run by governments. You have to ask, why did they send this message? Did this message come to you repeatedly? That's one of the first and most valuable and important signs, because propaganda is repetition. Propaganda is repetition. Repetition, repetition, repetition. When you're driving down the freeway and you see the same billboard over and over, that's deliberate. When you're watching the television, you see the same commercial, or YouTube, and you're watching the same commercial over and over, that's deliberate. They want to bang into your head their slogan or their jingle. Is anybody old enough? Were most of you raised here in Los Angeles? Do you remember, I would pay real money to have this jingle effaced from my memory? Pete Ellis Dodge, Long Beach Freeway, Firestone exit, Southgate. I see we have some people who remember that. I wish the men in black would come with their neuralizer and blink that right out of my head. I can never get rid of it. Ever. Some of you who are older may remember plomp, plomp, fizz, fizz, and you know exactly what follows. Oh, what a relief it is. Ladies and gentlemen, when I say that phrase, plop, plop, fizz, fizz, I have just activated a pop-up in your brain. It's a full audio-visual presentation with music and sound effects. You can see the pill dissolving in the water. Now, if somebody did that to your computer, you'd be upset. How did this slip past my antivirals? How did this slip past my firewall? How is this now slowing down my processing power and my memory, even though I've got plenty, and interrupting me while I'm trying to work? You'd be angry. How much more angry should you be that they put this in your head? Did you give informed consent? Did anybody ask you permission to do this to you? And that's just advertising. Advertising is relatively harmless compared to big government. So, the final point. When you know that you're dealing with propaganda, the only way to deal with it is to deny access. As you've seen, if you are repeatedly exposed, it gets in your head deliberately, because you've got very high-powered psychologists behind this. Deny access. That's what the people in those swing states should have done, and I'm sure they would have done had they known that the messages they were receiving came from Vladimir Putin. And that's the skill that we all need to develop in order to fight off this problem and to be sure that our opinions in all their diversity really are our own. And once we've done so, then we can approach the real problems of our world with clear heads, clear eyes. One last thing I want to communicate. I've given you the bare essentials. My name is Jack Nolan, and I am a trained propagandist, graduate of the John F. Kennedy Special Warfare Center in school. And afterwards, I went off to work in the film industry, where I saw propaganda being made and insinuated into our television and features. And I'll be glad to talk to you all about that. The thing that I can't communicate, even in book-length form, is how to think like a propagandist. Does anyone here remember a film called They Live, produced by John Carpenter back in the 80s? In this, not a very good movie, mind, but a lovely metaphor, the main character had a set of special sunglasses. And when he peered through these sunglasses, he could see the world in a different way. And he tried desperately to get the people around him to put on the glasses, to see the world as he saw it. Well, that's very much how I feel, because I think like a propagandist, and I see the world in a slightly different way. And I know that you have a lot of very smart people here, marketing people here, for example, psychologists, and they see the world in a similar way, that's slightly different. If you don't have this training, listen to them. But at the very least, have a listen to what I have to say. My audiobook's available for like $3. The electronic reader version is available for $3. You'll come away thinking slightly differently. You'll come away, I pray, thinking like a propagandist. So that, yes, there will be some steps taken to try to prevent Putin and the others from interfering with our next election. But if we don't put down our own personal firewalls, the next guy they put on, the next guy foreign agents put in the White House may not be, forgive me, a bumbler. He may be a competent authoritarian like Juan Perón or Francisco Franco, and then, ladies and gentlemen, the jig is up. I see we have 2 minutes left. We have some very intelligent people in this room. I'm looking forward to hearing some wonderful questions. Our nation is at stake. Impress me.
Check.
I'll start out because I'm holding it. Can you talk a little bit about some of the propaganda you perpetrated? It could be for good, not necessarily for evil.
I can give you a brief overview of what PSYOP units do. Now, mind, I don't want to oversell myself. I'm no war hero. I served with the 353rd Research and Analysis Company here in Seal Beach, and when they inactivated with the 15th Tactical up in Upland, California. Both fine units. PSYOP deals with foreign personnel, whether you're dealing with enemy combatants or you're dealing with civilians. On enemy combatants, we have rained artillery down upon an Iraqi unit. It's reduced to 50% strength. We rain down upon these little comic strips, and these little comic strips provide explicit instructions on how to surrender safely. And why you want to, because we have a good reputation, or at least we did. I'm an MP, don't get me started, Abu Ghraib. So, and they therefore surrender, which means that they're not fighting to the death, we're not having to fight people to the death, and lives are saved. Now this is a weapon system, classified as a weapon system, and we're prohibited from using it on you, but the point is, lives were saved on both sides, and I think everybody can get behind that, no matter where they stand on the interventions in the Gulf. Another example might be interfacing with civilians. Hey folks, this is our main supplier route. Please don't drive here. Please don't walk here, even if you're a refugee. We really hate picking you out of our tank treads. Sorry, black humor. All right, that's what PSYOP units do, and I was involved in that, in the production of it, researching and profiling target audiences when I was in the research company. Tactical PSYOP is a little bit more boots on the ground, using loudspeakers. As an example, you wheel up a loudspeaker up to some enemy unit, and you play the sound of tanks going on. And they think, oh, we're being attacked. No, you're not. It's a loudspeaker. Fine. You do that 2 times, 3 times, they start getting used to it. By the 30th time, it's a real tank company. So yeah, there's a lot of wicked supervillain stuff going on here. But the things that I would like to tell you about are the things that I saw in the civilian world. I was on the set of a television show, no names please. Here's the DP saying I'm standing in, so I'm right there on top of the action. Here's the DP saying, okay, so the bartender pours the drambuie in one hand, the Coke in the other, we pan down from that to the drink, then over here to our actor sitting in the booth, and I get my $25,000, right? Now, aside from the fact that I resent this because he's getting 25 grand and not sharing it with us when we're in this de facto commercial. I've complained to my guilds about it. It's a long story. But, I mean, also look how simple it was for them to slip a drambuie and a Coca-Cola commercial right there into your television show. And I can show you that on Netflix right now when you think you're watching a commercial-free show. No, there's no such thing. Another one that I was involved in, some of you may remember Superman Returns. And there's a scene there where the Superman lands a plane in the stadium, and a kid yells out, "Superman!" I was right there when that was being filmed, by the way. And there's a guy you look it up, you'll see there's a guy right behind him holding a big cup marked Bud Light. They're using Superman to sell alcohol to kids. But nothing has changed. Back in 1980, I remember Superman 2, where he's fighting General Zod. General Zod punches him and slams him into a great big Marlboro truck. Now we're using Superman to sell tobacco to kids. Must I quote Kevin Spacey? That's wrong. So those are examples that I've personally seen, and examples of some of the things I've had my part in. One last example, feature film that I was involved in. Again, no names, please. My job is simply to type away at a computer, and they set up the camera right here next to me. Great. Set guy puts an open can of Sierra Mist right there next to me. Well, maybe it's his drink. I'll just move it aside. Nope, he puts it right back. Aha! That's product placement, and you got to give me a lot more money to associate my face with that product. They replaced me. Did that answer your question? Great. Next question.
Well, actually, just to follow up there, since you were on the subject of product placements, is that something that's been going on forever, or is some of that more of a reaction to things like TiVo that would let you skip ads that were put in overtly?
I can't speak authoritatively on that. I can say that I have an eye, my special sunglasses for this sort of thing. Let's go back to Casablanca. Everyone seen it? Wonderful. I love this film. That is great propaganda, by the way. That is propaganda that inspires us to be our best. I love this. But in the midst of it, they are showing people constantly drinking and constantly smoking, even Ingrid Bergman. Now, yes, they're in a bar, Rick's Cafe Americain, sure. But the point is they're reinforcing the norm that everybody smokes and everybody drinks all the time, including the women. This wasn't always so, and now it's certainly not so. And if you watch the film now, you look at it and you think, whoa, what's all this? So, yes, there's product placement even back there. Now, you look at things today. I remember watching Superman back in 78, 79, back in the movie theaters. I'm an old guy. And there was a Cheerios box right there next to Ma Kent. And you look at, I was in a TV show. Again, no names. Lovely scene, argument between a couple. It happens to take place in a Nissan dealership. And this was about 2008, 2009, I'm going to say. So, yeah, it's a consistent thing. It's always been there. And it may always be there. The exceptions, thank heaven, are wonderful fantasies like Star Wars or Lord of the Rings, where you can't really slip a Cheerios box in there. Does that answer your question? Very good. Anyone else? Please.
I'm interested in this this deny access step, and I'm wondering, like, by what mechanism do we achieve that? Because since everything that we see around us is basically a form of propaganda, and everybody has kind of a lot more money and willpower than we do, so the deny access step seems like kind of a way to just get into this extreme form of like isolation, and that seems kind of dangerous also. So how do we do that?
That is an excellent question. I myself have to wrestle with that every day. Now, there's no way to absolutely deny access, obviously. You're a person living in the modern world. And I wrestle with this. I can't go out of my apartment without seeing billboards. And every time I see one, I have this parenthetical message in my head, made you look. So it's like a constant warfare. And I really do feel like my force fields are up all the time. It's like this pressure, and it makes me feel like a foreigner in my own culture, and I don't like feeling like that. But at least I know that that kind of advertising is relatively harmless. When you get into watching a political debate on television, you can feel them trying to channel you into left audience, right audience, and then trying to encourage your brand loyalty. And that's harmful. You've seen the rise of polarization. You've seen that it's very difficult to have a conversation with somebody who holds a different political view because they immediately become defensive and hostile. And often so do you. So how does one deny access? Well, the simple and obvious tools, of course. Don't watch commercial television. Watch it on Netflix. Read a book. Except I remember one time I opened up a 70s copy of William Goldman's The Marathon Man, and right there was a Marlboro ad. Great. Fortunately, that practice is gone. Ad blockers on your computer using a secure browser. I personally use Firefox, but I'm going to bow to the superior experience of everybody in here. AdBlock Plus is still, despite recent issues, still very good. I'm able to watch YouTube without commercials popping up. That's helpful. Just being aware and finding every way you can to deny access without cutting yourself off. It requires effort, and it requires thought, and it requires application. But it's something I feel that has to be done. It's a survival skill in our culture, so that you can know that the opinions that you've formed and the choices that you make day to day, the economic as well as political choices, whether you go eat at Harry's Burger, where a man is his own boss, or whether you go to McDonald's, where a person is putting together putting together your food by factory rules written by some guy in Ohio. Those choices your own? If you have the firewall in place, and if you try to deny access, you can at least feel a little more confident. Now, Chris here reminded me of a wonderful principle from my military days, defense in depth. The idea that you have multiple layers of defense in order to secure something. My car was stolen, so I put on an alarm, and I have LoJack, and I have all these different tricks I've pulled to keep it from being stolen again. Multiple levels of protection. It's the only way to be sure. Even then, it's not foolproof, but it's better. And so that's the only answer I can give you. And honestly, one of the things I hope is that people will use my book as a kind of framework, and that people who are much smarter than me, like Noam Chomsky, will come in and say, "Hey, good start, kid. Let's build upon this format. Let's build upon this framework." And that by the time they're done, people like you, for example, coming in and telling us about search engine optimization, so that a particular sponsored product comes up in your search list first. I know nothing about this. I need good people like you to write that chapter. And more and more contributors will come, and more people sharing their experiences with things like denying access, so that this firewall can get stronger and stronger, and it becomes less and less associated with me, and more the kind of collaborative effort that you see at Microsoft, where they've got Windows Defender written by many, many more than one programmer. Next question.
There's so many questions, but one of your things is evaluating the credibility of sources, and certainly in the last year or so, fake news has been very much one of the topics, and there are various attempts now on the part of like Facebook and other companies, including our own, to try to figure out how you might identify this. So how can you tell if a source is credible?
A very good question. Well, first off, remember that the political parties are trying to ensure brand loyalty. If you're one head of a two-headed duopoly, and you know your product isn't very good, what are you going to do? You're going to insult the other guy's product. So if you see a news show or a talk show or read an article where they're just constantly bagging on the other side, you know you're dealing with propaganda. Keith Olbermann opens his mouth and outpours a diatribe against Donald Trump. Or Michael Moore opens his mouth and talks about all the terrible conservatives in the world. Well, if you're a conservative, you can naturally take offense, but even if you're a liberal, understand that propaganda you agree with is the most dangerous to you, and that the true test of your firewall is whether or not it can protect you from propaganda you agree with. And on the other side, you get Rush Limbaugh talking about the liberals, and you get Ann Coulter talking about how awful the Democrats are and how awful Obama is or was. And yeah, you can know right there what you're dealing with. Now, most of the news sites, CNN, U.S. News and World Report, the BBC, these are going to be reputable because they have a lot at stake with their credibility. As I said, the extremes less so. There's a very good website that I've found I can recommend. I have some concerns about it, but it's called allsides.com. And on allsides.com, they have people reviewing and rating the coverage of various news sources and saying whether it's where it falls on the political spectrum. That's very useful. So they have a page where you can look at the let's say you find an article in Huffington Post. What's Huffington Post? So you look it up, and lo and behold, they're just left of center. Fine. And so you know what you're dealing with. And they all, they present news stories from all across the spectrum. So you can, if you have an interest in a particular story, you can see everybody's take on it and everybody's spin on it. Very useful website. Have some concerns about the rating system, but all in all, valuable. If you're looking at motion pictures, I did find a very good site called, oh gosh, what was this thing? I'll have to look it up. But anyway, this website mentioned commercialism, consumerism in its review of movies. Very good. You know, I think we need websites that will list the amount of product placement from no noticeable to substantial to Michael Bay was feeding unpleasant habits that month. And will tell us in advance before we go to see it, because they're very good about slipping these product placements in there in a way that you won't notice. And so I forget the name of the website, but I'll get back to you on that. So these are very useful resources that are available if you're looking for them. Does that help? Yes, sir.
Yeah, 1, 2. One thing you said that kind of surprised me, you characterized the kind of the state propaganda as the big brother and the commercial one as the little brother, which this kind of seems odd. I think it looks like way more money is put into the commercial propaganda and also the political propaganda. There is somebody who has as much interest in, who also has the resources in kind of countering that. But in the case of commercial propaganda, where the main message of just about every commercial that you see is that if you buy my crap, then you will be loved, right? That's like the underlying message of just about any commercial ever. Yeah, but it's then there's so much little that there. I mean, of course, there are people who tell you no, that's not what's important. There are out there, but the amount of exposure that they can cause to you, I mean, they're much smaller. So I mean, it would seem to me that it's the other way around. It's the political one that's the little brother.
Well, you make a very good point, and I agree that certainly the corporations tend to be investing in more money, and there are fewer voices refuting them. One of them would be, for example, Buddhism, the idea of abjuring materialism. I've often thought that if Buddhism were to become the major religion, that our entire economy would collapse. Anyway, but I was really speaking more in terms of, well, I created a Venn diagram for the book, which I wish I brought with me as a slide. The idea is that advertising is a subset of propaganda. So purest propaganda you find in state-sponsored propaganda, like you'd find, say, in North Korea, or the kind that you'd see coming from the political parties during election seasons. The subset called advertising is defined as any message that directly serves the economic needs of the sender. And so you see, advertising is a subset of the larger rubric of propaganda. And to my way of thinking, it's much the less interesting one. I mean, I feel that we've inundated ourselves with advertising to the point of saturation, and I find it depressing. But I don't find it as dangerous as the kind of thing that we're seeing now with fake news. And that's why I'm so alarmed. And honestly, when I wrote my book back in 2015, I had no idea that suddenly fake news and alternative facts, a phrase designed to make Orwell spin in his coffin like a dervish, that these would become front page news and would be dominating the airwaves. Really, in some ways, I feel like I was prescient, and I'm very grateful. I wish things had gone differently. Anyway, so that's why I feel that advertising could be thought of as the little brother to larger scale propaganda. But you're right. More funds go into advertising what we think of as commercials, and then go into political campaigns. But political campaigns are significant. I know that in a book, The Assault on Reason, written by Al Gore, and I cannot recommend this book because Al Gore is very partisan. However, he did write something that I think is important for every American to understand. He wrote that, and he's a senator, mind, so he's putting his credibility on the line by saying this. During the build-up to the second intervention in Desert Storm, second intervention in Iraq, this would be under George W. Bush, not Desert Storm, excuse me, when the Capitol Dome should have been ringing with extensive debate, most of the senators were absent. They weren't there debating whether or not our country should go to war, which is, I think, one of their major functions. No, they were out soliciting funds for their re-election campaigns. And what are they buying with the solicited funds? Propaganda. They're buying commercial spots, and they're buying buttons, and they're buying posters. So yes, propaganda once again shows itself as being one of our society's major problems. And if we take it upon ourselves to make ourselves more resistant to propaganda, mind, there's no such thing as invulnerability. I'm as well educated as they come in this field, and I'm not invulnerable. If we take it upon ourselves to make ourselves more resistant, and who knows, maybe all these senators and representatives will actually try other means to get themselves reelected, like doing their jobs well. But that's why I feel that that advertising should be considered a little brother to Big Brother propaganda. Also, frankly, Big Brother propaganda came first. Next question. Now, fair disclosure, I'd like to introduce Aubrey Melidio. Aubrey Melidio is studied profiling with the FBI and looked over the psychological side of my book when it was in development. She also designed this spiffy cover.
Thank you, Jack. Okay, as a renegade professional propagandist, what can you do, if you can do anything directly, to target the fake news problem?
In my opinion, all we can do is to put the firewall out there, like Windows Defender, or AdBlock, or any other program that we use to protect our computers from outside tampering. But this is one for our minds. We didn't take it seriously. And in our arrogance, we thought, no, we're fine. Propaganda doesn't affect us. Yes, it does, as any successful ad man will tell you, and Putin exploited that. Not good. I think we need to be teaching this material at the high school level, as I said. I think we need to be teaching Aristotelian logic and argumentative logic at the high school senior level. And so that's why I'm working with my friend Doug King, who's a high school teacher. I'm hoping to turn this into what's called a module, like 4-week standard module and a 2-week fast track, so that this can be available to history teachers, social studies teachers, and English teachers. And in fact, anybody who wants to fit anything besides math, I guess, so that this material can be taught to our students. I think, as I said before, the buck stops with us this time. The legislature is not going to help us, and the police force can't help us. It's up to us.
So are you saying it's too late? We have to start early when they're kids?
No, I'm not. I think that anybody can be taught to, and can teach themselves, when exposed to the right material, to think like a propagandist. Ray Bradbury once said, if you can't find the book that you want in the library, sit down and write it. Well, I looked around. Edward Bernays, Gustave Le Bon. God help us, the Goebbels diaries. I had to wade that Parisian sewer to write my book. And now I've brought his nuggets of wisdom for you, so you don't have to. You're welcome. It was hard reading. But no primer existed, no propaganda for dummies. And so I thought, I'm going to write this. I created a primer based upon my military training to say, okay, here's a framework. We can build on this. We can make this work. It's not too late. We can give people the special sunglasses. We can show people how I see the world. And I think that will be, well, it won't be absolute protection, but it'll be one extra layer of protection, one more barrier to prevent outside influence. And that makes us more free as individuals as well as a nation.
Thank you.
I had one other question myself, which was, how can we use propaganda in our own lives for our own benefit? You know, in a positive way, not an evil way.
Oh, I'm so glad you asked that. Let me give you some of my favorite examples. Propaganda, when it is, the tools of propaganda are more properly called the art of persuasion. Now, we use persuasion all the time. If the tools of the art of persuasion are not used to directly benefit you as the sender, well, then they're not propaganda. But you can use these tools. For example, I mentioned using cigarettes and alcohol in Casablanca to enforce a new norm. Well, let's look at people who've used that tool in other ways. 1967, Bill Shatner's Star Trek. Everybody remember that? Well, you have a milieu of the Mad Men, where Caucasian males run everything and the women are consigned to the switchboards and the African Americans are consigned to the waiters. And they come home from that exhausting world where the Democratic National Committee are literally in punch fests. And they sit down and they see this new workplace, the Bridge of the Enterprise, where an African-American woman and an Asian man and an alien and a Russian are all working together in harmony, and they're there because of their accomplishments, not because of their race. That was an inspiring new message back then. I mean, it seems kind of quaint now because we kind of have we've kind of made that a reality. Terrific. But Gene Roddenberry and Gene Kuhn gave us this vision of a future. Another example. There was a man who was a veteran of the Pacific Theater, and then he went into ad work, writing jingles and so forth, and he got so sick of it, just like I did. So he began writing TV shows, and he was known as TV's Angry Young Man. And after writing some serious shows and getting them rejected by the censors, he says, you know what, I'm going to make a fantasy show, because fantasy shows the censors don't care about. And there's a fabulous interview with him with Mike Wallace, where Mike Wallace comes down on him for writing for a lightweight genre. What are you doing selling out? No, I'm not selling out. I'm making something amazing. Well, that creator was named Rod Serling, and I'm sure you all remember The Twilight Zone. Now, The Twilight Zone, there's no interpreting. He dominates his audience. He tells you exactly what he wants you to think by the end of that show. That's the mechanism of manipulation at work. This guy was using those tools that he learned in advertising to channel you to his preconceived conclusions all the way. And God bless him for it. Really good stuff. Norman Lear, All in the Family, showing us Archie Bunker. Do you want to be like this? No, you don't. Then don't think like him. Good stuff. And we see this continuing in the modern era. We see television shows that are put together, and motion pictures that are put together by enlightened people who have an idea of what they'd like the world to be and want to promote it. Most recently, and please don't laugh, I'm very fond of My Little Pony, the recent revision. Lauren Faust is the name of the creator, and she created a lovely vision of the world as it should be. And if you dismiss the unicorns and the Pegasi, it's a really lovely vision. So yes, this is happening even today. That's how you use propaganda for the best. Just remember, your objective is not to profit yourself. Your objective is to elevate and ennoble your audience. Hold on to that vision, and you can't go wrong.
Anything else?
So I thought you were asking about promo packages.
Oh, yeah.
Please.
Well, since you had brought up Goebbels, do you have any thoughts on his big lie hypothesis?
Oh, there's one of my favorites. It's a damned lie. It doesn't exist. The myth of the big lie comes from a passage in Mein Kampf, in which old Schicklgruber accused the other side of using big lie. And there's also a passage in one of the motion pictures that Goebbels created called, not Jud Sus, which one is it? Anyway, one of his propaganda stories where one of his antagonists, who's of course Jewish, starts talking about big lie. And the English accuse the Germans of using big lie. I read the entirety of Joseph Goebbels' personal diaries. Never once did I catch him bragging about actually using the big lie. And he gloats. Trust me, he gloats. No, I didn't catch him once gloating about using it. And I can tell you that it's not a principle that is taught at the USA JFK Special Warfare Center and School for Psychological Operations and Warfare. It's simply not taught. It doesn't work. While we're on things that don't work and we're debunking myths, subliminal advertising from Dr. Joseph Goebbels himself. Propaganda that is not perceived is not propaganda at all. Excuse me. If you can't perceive it, it doesn't work. Now, can it trigger somebody sitting in the audience who's already hungry and who likes popcorn to go out and buy some popcorn? Maybe. Can it persuade large groups of people the way propaganda does? Absolutely not. If it could, my job would have been a lot easier. Does that answer your question? Do we have any more? I'm thoroughly enjoying myself, so please.
Well, I think we can wrap it up for now, but thanks again for coming, and I hope everyone reads and enjoys and takes the lessons of the book.
Thank you all. It's been an honor.